This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about childhood pyromania, reading cheap suits, and 50 Shades of Larry Appleton. All that and more as we watch Season 6, Episode 23 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me, as always, is your other host and my brother. What's up, Imran?
Hello, everybody. How's it going, listener? Hi, sister. How are you?
Hi, brother. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. You know, this week's episode of The Perfect Strangers reminded me of how much of pyromaniacs we were when we were children. Did you have an obsession with fire?
No, I'm so afraid of fire.
I was very irresponsible.
That's why I don't like the broiler, remember?
Oh, that's
I'm
right.
so
That's why
afraid
your
of
duck
fire.
doesn't come out crispy.
Right.
Like, I can tell you what's really flammable and not based on irresponsible things I did as a child. Like, for example, do you know what's really flammable?
What?
Rubber cement. You write your name on the concrete and rubber cement, light it on fire.
Got alcohol.
Yeah, you know what else is really flammable?
What?
Hairspray. You know, you do the match and you hold the hairspray.
We never had hairspray in our house.
Any
Were
kind
you
of
at other
aerosol.
people's houses?
Any kind of aerosol,
Yeah.
you can make a torch. You know what else is really flammable?
What?
Non-dairy creamer. Particularly from Pizza Hut or Taco Bell.
Oh, the powder stuff.
Remember we had a party
In
in our
little packets,
backyard?
yeah.
And we had tiki torches?
Oh, yeah.
And then I had a bowl of non-dairy creamer.
Oh, yeah, we did burn a lot of things
And
when you were in high school with your high school friends.
We threw it at the torch and it made a huge fireball.
I remember
the
that.
The pine trees didn't catch on fire. Somehow.
You guys could have caused a major
That was the same
incident.
day we also tested a flame retardant teddy bear. Guess what? That thing did not burn.
Oh,
it
good.
was amazing. We
Oh,
held it
good.
over the fire. The thing did not catch on fire.
The babies are safe.
Anyways, this is to say, don't play with fire, listener. It's very irresponsible. But these are the things we used to do when we were kids because we didn't have cell phones and video games. I mean, we have video games, but this is how the generation of kids I grew up with entertain themselves, burning things.
Yeah, we sure did. It's a wonder you didn't cause a major incident.
I was
You really
trying to
could have
think.
burned down the neighborhood.
Oh, I'm gonna burn down a whole bunch of things accidentally.
Oof. I'm terrified of fires. But one time, here's my story before we even get to this episode. Remember how in physics, we had to make those like wooden stick bridges?
Oh yeah, and then you had to hold weight
and then test weight. Yeah. So my
thing caught on
friend who I was working on,
Take it out of
no, my
matchsticks?
friend was over and it was just the two of us working on our bridge. And like we were in the basement and like we didn't ever notice anything. And then our mom comes home and she's like, "What is that smell?" And we were like, "What?"
The hot glue gun.
No, there was some like ballast problem in the lights in the inside part of the basement where the laundry machines were.
Oh, and there was smoke?
Yeah, and it smelled weird, and we just didn't register it because we
Oh
were
my
just
God.
sitting there. And then, like the fire department came,
That
and
could have been an electrical
there
fire.
was some ballast issue.
That is to say, this week on Perfect Strangers, we are at Season 6, Episode 23, titled Great Balls of Fire.
Goodness gracious!
Everybody, you know that. We know where that
The
line
title
comes
of this
from.
episode, of course, comes from the very popular hit song by Jerry Lee Lewis called "Great Balls of Fire." You shake my
Yes,
bones and you
yeah.
rattle my burn.
Dun, 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 dun. Ooh,
Goodness gracious! Great balls of fire. That one.
Classic
Exactly.
rock and roll. Yes.
It became popular in 1957.
Great Balls of Fire, also the title of the 1989 biopic about Jerry Lee Lewis.
Of course. 'cause his
Dennis Quaid playing Jerry Lee Lewis. That's a pretty good movie. It's a good music
song,
movie.
Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah. But if you open the TV guide this week, here's what you would have read. Volunteer firemen Larry and Balky hope to get copy for a story, but instead get a fire at the station.
What?
Of course they do.
At the station.
Oh, boy. This is going to be hilarious.
Boys. The cast of this episode is our favorite Bronson Pinchot and Marklyn Baker as Balky and Larry. We also have the girls, Melanie Wilson and Rebecca Arthur, playing Jennifer Lyons and Marianne Spencer. And we have a guest fire chief.
Yes, and we are at April 26, 1991 in the Perfect Strangers timeline. And you can binge all these episodes along with us, listener. Amazon Freebie has them streaming all 8 seasons, as well as tons of other fun,
Join us.
nostalgic shows.
Yep. Alrighty, let's get into this. Finally, Act 1, we open. We're in the basement of the Chronicle. People are working, bustling about. Larry's off his main desk on a side little thing.
Yeah.
A typewriter table off to the side. I don't know why it's not on his desk.
The typewriter has its own little cart.
Station,
right?
yeah.
It's got its own wheels, and it's an old school typewriter.
Also, in 1991, newspapers were still using typewriters. I guess so.
In the basement, only upstairs they got the fancy word processor.
Yeah.
Maybe were there even computers, desktop?
We definitely used word processors
but it was
for
not,
journalism.
Not 91 when you were doing it.
In 96.
Okay, a few years later.
Or 97.
I bet a lot of people are still
96.
using typewriters in 91. But it's just funny that it's off to the side of his desk, and then you see Balky in this wide shot.
And he's typing away, writing some story, tappa, tappa, tappa.
And you see Balky wearing this pink shirt, this poofy shirt.
By the way, Balky's shirts have been
with
so
suspenders.
poofy this whole season. Yeah. They're just getting poofier and bigger and bigger.
They certainly are.
They look comfortable, but like in the beginning of the whole show, they weren't that like big. They were more embroidered.
Now they're just like poofy pirate shirts.
Yeah.
But in the wide shot, you notice Balky is like hemming and hawing back there, like he wants to ask Larry something important and is afraid to do it.
He's like pacing.
And it's a quick shot, but if you also notice, if you look on the floor, it looks like there's Skittles on the floor and some
like
type
of dirt,
object.
Chunk of dirt or something.
A thing, and I'm not really sure. There's a mess on the floor. It's very weird. And I was like, what is that stuff doing on the floor?
What is that stuff? Maybe
possibly something cut from an earlier thing, which we know they cut a lot of the beginning. They'll have different beginnings, like we talked in that last episode.
They don't bother to clean up the floor.
No, you reset the thing and you keep going, just sweep it away. There's all this stuff on the floor, never addressed.
Never addressed. But anyway, it's there. We saw it.
Yeah.
And Balky is like itching to tell Larry something. He's trying to figure out in his head. You see him pacing in the back. Finally, he's like commits to it, and he like crosses over, steps on top of Larry's desk, and then goes to the edge of the desk near where he's sitting with the typewriter and crouches down like a gargoyle
or like
Spider-Man.
He crouches down at the edge of his desk right at his face.
To me, it looks like a bat or a gargoyle.
Yeah, it's totally.
And he just
it looks like a spider
down at Larry from above him.
And Larry has not looked at him.
Because the typewriter thing is, I guess, a little bit lower than the desk.
Larry doesn't look at him and types and then stops typing. And then goes, something on your mind, Balky? After a pause.
And then Balky comes out of the crouch and sits on the desk. He goes, "Oh, cousin, you can read me like a cheap suit."
Cheap suit.
So this is a combination of two expressions. One is you can read me like a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other one is like on you like a cheap suit.
He's all over me like a cheap suit.
Something like that. Yeah.
Right. And the first one meaning you can tell what I'm about to say, or it's all written all over my face.
Like you know what I'm about. Yeah.
And the other one is just like a clingy phrase about being clingy.
Yeah. Clingy. So what do you think this combined phrase is meant
like
to mean?
A cheap suit. I don't know. It's very confusing because you're like, what are you trying to say? He was trying to say you could read me like a book, right?
Yeah, I think he was trying to say read me like a book. But also clingy. I don't know.
What is the thing Balky is afraid to ask Larry?
Well, he's like, he tries to test out the waters with Larry first. He goes, "Cousin, if you were me and you wanted to get you to do something that was really hard, long hours and no pay, how you would get you to do it?"
How you would get you.
So he's trying to get Larry to agree to something that doesn't have a big payoff. And Larry's like, "Oh, that's easy. I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to listen to logical arguments." And he goes, "So go ahead. Just state the facts, support it with statistical data, then be prepared for a flat no."
He's going to say no.
He's already decided he's going to say no to whatever this is.
And then we find out the premise as Balky walks away from the table. He goes, "Oh, forget it, cousin. I knew you wouldn't want to be a volunteer fireman." That's what he wanted to ask him. He goes, "Just never mind." And at that point, Larry's face kind of lights up and he stands up and goes, "I'll do it." What?
And Balky doesn't even, he's so not used to Larry agreeing so fast that he's like still putting up a fight. He didn't hear him. He goes, "Just forget it. The firehouse needs volunteers. I thought you might like to do something for the community, but obviously." And then Larry's like, "No, I said I'll do it." And Balky's still going on. I was wrong. Okay, it's not the first time. I was been wrong before. And Larry's like, "I'll do it." And Balky's like, "You'll do what?"
He'll do what? What are you talking about?
And he says he'll be a volunteer fireman.
Wow. Balky's shocked.
Balky's shocked. He's not. Not. He hasn't had this like easy acquiescence before.
Yeah.
And he looks up at Larry and he goes, "You never cease to erase me."
Erase me.
He meant to say, amaze me.
You never cease to amaze me. Erase me.
Erase me.
Yeah.
That's a weird wordplay.
I know.
Actually.
I don't know why they changed
Kinda
amaze
random.
to erase. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason Larry wants to do it is because Wainwright has been after him to do a human interest story. Yeah.
Of course.
And being a volunteer fireman, he says, would be a great story.
And then Balky's like, "Wait a minute, that's why you're going to do it? If that's why you're going to do it, you shouldn't do it." And then Larry's like, no, that's not the only reason. He said, "I would think my commitment to the community would go without saying." He keeps saying community like Balky. I love it when he does that. He's like, "When do we start?" And Balky's like, still kind of shocked. He doesn't know how to react because he was ready to put up a fight. He's like, "Yeah, I guess we start tomorrow." And then Larry's like, "You don't seem excited. What's wrong?"
Yeah,
and he's like, "I don't know, cousin. I got you to do exactly what I wanted you to do, and yet you somehow managed to suck all the joy out of it." He's like upset that
he didn't fight and have to
like
go through
ready.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
That Larry just agreed to do this thing.
which he also means he kind of takes joy in that
yes,
process.
that torture. He likes the torture. He should be happy. Anyways, we cut to a fire station, presumably the following day. And then we're inside the set, and Larry and Balky walk in this door, and they're both wearing fireman coats.
And like denim.
Denim shirt, like a light blue shirt and jeans.
Matching. Light denim shirt.
And they got fireman hats. Larry is wearing a fireman's hat, and Balky is gleefully like a kid holding the fireman's hat and looking at it.
And he says, "I love hats. I particularly love this hat. It's so elaborate. On Meepos, the firefighters wear a watermelon rind with a chin strap."
What? It's a great imagery.
That is so goofy, but I love it.
And I love that first line when they walk in. He goes, "Cousin, they gave us hats." He just loves hats.
Watermelon rind with
it. Yeah, we got beats. Lisa Simpson's line. And Larry thinks this is going to be a piece of cake. When we see it cuts to the wide shot and there's like a pole there.
Fire pole, yeah.
There's a fire pole and this older gentleman slides down the fire pole. This is going to be the chief.
Chief Newton.
He lands and he goes, "I'm Chief Newton. He's in charge of training volunteers."
Becky's like, "Oh, we're volunteers." And he goes, "I hate volunteers."
He's grumpy and grizzly. Chief Newton goes, "They like to wear the hat, but they can't take the heat. The hats are yours when you finish the training," he tells them. And he goes to grab the hat off Balky's head, and Balky will not let go of the hat. He grabs on. In fact,
like a bait, like a child throwing a tantrum.
And it's like his head is glued to the hat.
Yeah.
Chief Newton pulls him over and drags him by the hat.
Yeah, he's gone
and Balky's just holding onto the helmet, and he's pulling him and kicking him off. And Chief Newton finally has to tickle Balky to get him to let go of the hat.
And then Balky the whole time he's like, "Don't take my hat. I love the hat."
He got his hat taken away.
And then, so the chief takes Balky's and Larry's hats. And then Larry's like trying to get his story at this point. So he pulls out his little reporter notebook thing and a pencil. And he's like, "Can I ask a couple of questions?" And the chief goes, "Shut up."
The chief's not having it.
And they both kind of like jump a little. And the chief goes, "For the next 6 weeks, you do what I say when I say. If I say jump, you say how high. If I say make coffee, you say how hot. If I say paint the fire truck, you say how red. You got that?" And Balky's like, "Okay, let me recap. That was how high, how hot, how red, right? Or was it high hat, red hot, and how now?"
Oh, no.
And Chief goes, "Shut up."
And Balky goes, "Do people tell you look like Sinatra?"
He does.
he did. He's silver haired. He looks all like Frank Sinatra. He could play a stud double.
So we get the idea of this chief. He's like this ornery, grumpy man who's supposed to train volunteers, but he hates volunteers.
He hates volunteers. He hates people.
We never find out why he hates volunteers.
He's just a grumpy, grizzly fuck because he's the things he's seen in Chief Newton's past. So he's like, okay, let me show you all this equipment. They walk over to the left where there's a bunch of things. You see there's an axe on the wall. He goes, this is an axe. Don't touch it. As Balky attempts to walk over there. Then he goes, this is a high-rise backpack. Don't touch it. And it's just like a backpack with a hose. And there's this red machine that's hilarious. It looks like it came off the set of like the Batman 66 show.
Yeah, it does.
There's a red siren. There's like a pump on it. There's dials.
The pump was so Batman.
It's so Batman. And there's like 2 blue tubes and 2 large like megaphone things the tubes are connected to.
It doesn't look like a real thing at all from 1991.
It's so funny.
But in sitcom world, it was very real.
He says this is a state-of-the-art fire extinguisher, the AFXQ 9000, the Mighty Max.
The Mighty Max.
And again, Bucky's about to touch it. He goes, lay a finger on it, you're off the program. He doesn't want him to touch any of these things they need to use to help fight fires.
So he shows them those things. He's like, okay, now it's time to train or whatever. Let's get to work. And he's like, let's get your gear. He puts like this tank thing on Balky's back.
Yeah, they first put on these oxygen tanks.
It's a breathing apparatus, he says.
Yeah.
And Larry's like, is it as heavy as it looks? And he's like, it's heavier. And then he puts the tank on Balky, and then Balky helps Larry get his stuff on. And then Chief Newton comes back with like a big roll of like flattened fire hose on a roll.
Yes.
The kind they wear over their shoulders.
Yeah.
And he's like, water delivery apparatus over your right shoulder. And he puts it on Larry's shoulder, and Larry like falls a little under the weight.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's heavy too. And then he takes the another hose and puts it on Balky's shoulder, and Balky like totally tips over.
Falls over
onto Chief Newton, and Chief Newton catches him and like straightens him back up again. He gives them these like 2 pry bars.
There's 2 bars on the floor
iron
in
bars,
front of them.
And he picks them up. And he's like, pry bars for your left hand. And Balky and Larry both take the bars at the same time. Well, in a brilliant bit of acting.
Yeah.
They act as if the bar is very bottom heavy, and they both go clunk down to the ground at the same time. He picks it up with
no problem, holds it in the middle up in the air, right?
No, he kind of hoists it a little.
He lifts it up, but then they grab it in the middle, and as soon as he lets go, it goes dunk,
down to the ground. Yeah.
And they make it look like it's really heavy.
I know,
even with the sound, it was very believable. And then Balky goes, cousin, this is almost exactly like the outfit I wore to my grammar school graduation. And then he goes, except, of course, I had the snorkel. And he makes a little face.
God,
Can you imagine little Balky?
What was his grammar school outfit
with a snorkel? They just let them wear whatever they wanted. It was a very, very progressive school. It's a great graduation.
I wonder if he had a watermelon helmet with a chin strap.
With a rind. Now they got to get in some cardio and some practice, right? So the chief takes him around. And in the back, you'll notice there's this little training area with like a small set of stairs going up and down.
Like 4 steps up and 4 steps down. Just like a little.
And Chief Newton's like, all right, give me 40 flights.
Like the kind you would see in like physical therapy or something.
Yeah. It's very small.
Little mini staircase.
Yeah. And Larry's like, I'm not much of a climber. I'm more an on-the-ground management type guy. And he slowly starts to go up the steps with all the heavy equipment.
One step at a time.
Meanwhile, Balky is like hoofing it and like has like 3
He's
reps.
like running back and forth. He does the
up
whole
and down
thing
3 times.
And Larry's just slowly like the tortoise, like taking 1 step at a time. And Balky's running back and forth over the steps. He's like, this is going to do wonders in defining our quads. And the chief goes, shut up.
Shut up. And then he goes back. Balky races back over. And at this point, Larry only has finally come back down.
Yeah.
And then he just goes, 1.
And he drops his pole to the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. Larry does not have the stamina to be a volunteer fireman.
Chief Newton, by the way, is played by an actor named Ron Dean.
Oh, Ron Dean.
Who was, as many of our guest stars, he was in many movies and television shows, including Risky Business, The Breakfast Club, T.J. Hooker, The Color of Money, Wise Guy, Above the Law, Cocktail, The Fugitive, Murder, She Wrote, ER, The West Wing, a bunch of things, 6 Feet Under, Numbers, The Dark Knight.
Oh, he was in The Dark Knight?
Beast.
Oh, he does look familiar. He was one of like the mob guys.
He was also had recurring roles in Frasier, NYPD Blue, and a couple other things.
Have you seen the Frasier reboot yet? I've heard it's okay.
I have not seen it.
I have not watched it either. It's on Paramount Plus.
Okay.
It's not even on like broadcast TV. It's only on streaming, which is interesting. But yeah, Frasier's back, people.
Frasier.
Yeah.
It's like the kids. Like, what's the storyline?
I have no idea.
Is it them in the future, or is it like a redo?
No, it's like Frasier. Kelsey Grammer's in it as Frasier, present day. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about Chief Newton, a very well known at the time actor. Okay. The next scene, we're back at the apartment after this first day of training, presumably, and Larry is just like lying, like almost passed out on the couch. He's just horizontal on the couch, looking completely exhausted. Yeah. His shirt's like half untucked, but they're still in that like blue matching light denim shirt and jeans.
Yeah.
And Balky's like swinging his leg off the side of the couch, and he's like looking quite happy. And he goes, cousin, while you were unconscious, Chief Newton told us tomorrow he's going to show us exactly how close you can get to the flames and still keep your eyebrows.
Okay, so at some point, Larry passes out while they're in the training of volunteer firemen. Great. Larry clearly did not have a good time. He says, I'm never going back to that fire station. And Balky's like, what about your story? He goes, I got another story. Balky goes, what about your commitment to the community? And then Larry lifts his head and goes, I never wanted to help the community.
And Balky's like, you lied. And he's like, yeah, I lied. Okay, fine.
And he pulls him up by his hair, makes him sit up.
Like, And he goes, but this is not a lie. This is the truth. I'm never going back to that fire station ever again.
Done.
He's done. He had a miserable time. And Balky's like, whatever, I'm going back. And he says, ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no river deep enough, ain't no fire hot enough to keep me from getting that hat. I love it.
And the first line he says, he kind of sings it. He goes like, ain't no mountain high enough. Like, and then he starts to say the other two. It's kind of funny.
To keep me from getting that hat, babe. It's the same syllables.
Yes.
Yeah. That, of course, is a reference to the very popular song, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. First was popular in 1966 by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell.
Oh, yeah.
And then again in 1970 by Diana Ross.
Yeah, I know that version.
Not the first time we've encountered this song on this show either. Balky had sung a bit on a previous episode in this same season. So
they're repeating songs now?
Yeah.
Anyways, come on. There's hundreds of songs. You got to pick another song.
No, but this one worked so well.
Yes.
For the situation and the syllables. So Balky's like, I'm getting that hat. And he's like, I'm going to my room. He tells Larry to sit right there and think about what he's doing, young man.
Young man.
And so Balky exits the scene to his bedroom. And then there's a knock at the door.
It's Jennifer. Larry answers the door and she goes, hi, Larry. Is it true you've become a volunteer fireman? Jennifer asks right away.
She's very like antsy. She's like, she's very pressed about something. She's like, is it true?
Yes, she's very excited about something. And Larry's about to explain his recent decision when she cuts him off. She goes, Larry, there's something I have to tell you. And she goes, maybe I shouldn't. I feel so foolish. And Larry assures her, look, we're getting engaged. You can tell me anything. Come over here. He tells her. They go sit down on the sofa. And Jennifer.
He says, you can tell me anything. I told you about my fear of eggs.
Yeah, Larry has a fear of eggs. Have we ever heard of
information?
Did we not know about that before?
No, we knew about his fear of heights.
Yes. What does Jennifer have to tell him?
Okay, what she has to tell him is, to be honest, something a little too saucy, I think, for TGIF.
I mean, we just had sexy duck calls. How much more saucy can it get?
That's true. We are pushing the sauce. Well, this gets, I don't know.
Pushing the sauce limit here.
We're pushing the sauce limit here. I don't know if this is better or worse than the sexy duck calls. Yeah. But here she goes. She goes, he's like, you can tell me anything. And she goes, okay, I've always had this fantasy about firemen.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh. And she like gets excited. She gets all like heated up as she continues saying this. She says, I see this dashing man in a suit streaked slicker, silhouetted by a raging fire. He hacks his way into my bedroom with an axe. He scoops me up in his arms. And Larry now is like getting all hot and bothered and excited. And then she stops herself. She goes, I've said too much.
Larry's like, no, you haven't.
Yeah. And then she goes, he carries me to safety. He leans me against the truck, the rungs of his ladder, and then she kind of rolls her eyes a little.
Pauses.
She goes, pressing against my back. And then she's like, I can't go on.
This is what you would call back in the day getting all, quote, hot and bothered.
But you know what's funny about this? Now that I look at these words, like she doesn't say anything about anything super racy.
Right,
it's just the demeanor
the way
and what she's implying.
Yes.
But she doesn't talk about the man's like muscles or body or
I was like, well, go on.
How he holds
what
her.
happens?
No body parts are mentioned.
It's just a rescue and like
it's just a description. Like Soot Streaked Slicker. Yeah. There's like not even anything.
She goes, I can't go on, and Larry just goes, try.
And she goes, there was always one thing missing. My fireman was faceless until now. Larry, you're that face in my fantasy.
Oh, and my word.
Then she like lunges at him.
She jumps his bones.
She jumps him and they like kiss passionately on the couch. They're like horizontal.
Yeah, she's like lying on top of him. Like, he's leaning
mounts
back.
Him basically.
And then she just pops up and goes, well, I better be going.
And he's like all disheveled. He's like, what? And then she goes to the door and she turns back. She goes, I just wanted to share that with you. Larry's like, I'm glad you did. And she leaves. No big deal.
And Larry is just like...
What a tease.
Yes, he's all in a daze. He's been worked up right now. He's sitting there and he's like... You can see his face like, oh my God. He sits up, he grabs the glass of water, takes a sip, and then he just takes the rest of the water and throws it at his face because he needs to cool off.
He throws it in his face. Yeah.
Throws it in his face and gets
cool off.
Yeah, and he's just, his tongue's hanging out.
Bothered.
And she got him, but I love it. She's like, well, I better be going. And she got him all worked up and left.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so interesting. It's just like how she delivered the lines and what she implied, but like everything was super, super clean in this description of this fireman.
Props, good delivery.
Good delivery, good writing, I guess, too.
Yeah, it worked.
Okay, so he throws water on himself and she leaves, whatever. Balky comes back out from his bedroom. He's got a notepad. He's been making a list of pros and cons to convince Larry to go back to the fire station. And before he could say anything, or he's like telling him he made a list as he comes to the couch. And then he pauses. He stops talking. He sees that Larry's wet. And then he like looks up at the ceiling.
Like, is it raining in here?
If anything was leaking. But doesn't say anything. It's all like this silent little funny joke. And it's he's so like, great.
Okay.
And then he just goes on. He's like, whatever, without explaining the water. He goes, I don't have to, I'm going to convince you to do this if it takes me all night. And Larry's just like, I'll do it. Once again, this is the third time, right?
He's like, don't you find me on this. It's going to make you a better person, dagnabbit.
And Larry's like, I'll go back. I'll serve the community.
The community.
I'll be a volunteer fireman. And Balky's just like, again, like, and he throws down his notebook. He goes, well, feed me lemons and make me pucker.
Oh, they did that bit again.
Again, that format of joke, which we've seen just about every episode.
But this time it's not a call me something.
Yeah, but
it's a make him do something.
Yeah. But we've seen a version of this joke, I think, in just about every episode this season.
This one is like the weakest one. Feed me lemons and make me pucker.
Yeah.
Come on. That's what happens. It's not. What do you do? Anyways, fade to black. That's the end of Act 1. Listener, you could join this conversation by joining our Facebook group. There's a link in the episode description.
That's not how he would.
No, that's not how you say it.
Say it.
Suit. The Fussy Book group. I post threads of every episode we're going to record. I just posted the first 4 for season 7.
Oh,
we're getting to season 7.
There.
So you can comment. You can watch on Amazon Freebie. Leave your observations. We'll roll it into the show and read them. It's lots of fun. And you get to interact with other people who share your love for perfect strangers and listen to this podcast, right? It's win-win-win all around.
What if the line was, well, give me lemons and call me lemonade or something like that? I don't know.
I don't know. Feed me lemons
and make me pucker. Okay.
And call. He could have said and call me, and then you have to find a celebrity that's got like a natural pucker face. That's always, but that requires a little more work.
That's an extra thought step.
Yeah.
No, I don't like that. Okay. Act 2, we start at the fire station, but like a couple of days have passed. It's like later in the training week. I guess they only get one training week, which is like, seems like not enough for
that's plenty. It's fine. What do you guys show them? Here's where the water
we're back
comes
at the
out.
fire station. And
the fire truck's there.
The fire truck's there, and we see Chief Newton enter the scene by sliding down the fire pole into the scene.
Fun.
And he looks up the pole and he goes, Appleton, Bartaka Mouse.
Bartaka Mouse.
Get a move on.
Yeah.
And Balky from upstairs goes, actually, it's Bartakamus. And Chief goes, shut up.
He just loves telling him, shut up.
He's like, get down here. And so Balky, you see Balky like
effortlessly sliding down the pole.
And then he steps aside and he looks up and he goes, Cousin Larry Appleton, come on down.
Like it's The Price is Right or something, right?
That's what he said on
The Price is Right. And then you see Larry really slowly start to emerge from the pole hole.
It's so funny. He's like just squeaking down slowly, inching down. And then he stops mid-pole.
Oh, yes, he does stop, and he just hangs there.
He stops, and he's just
so
at
high.
the pole. He's afraid of heights. It's so high. And Balky's like, you're holding on too tight. You have to loosen your grip. And then Larry loosens his grip and then kind of like quick falls down the pole and like lands on his butt on the floor.
Yeah, he falls on his back.
Yeah.
And Balky goes over there to try to help him. He grabs his hand and pulls him up, and then Larry bangs his head into the pole, falls back down.
Yeah, and Larry's like sort of straddling the pole.
And at this point, his legs are on either side of the pole, and Balky grabs both of his legs
to try
and is about to yank him, which would get him right in the bits.
Yeah.
And Larry goes,
like,
no!
Even I yelled at as I was watching this. I was like, no!
He bonked him on the head. He's going to pull him right out his groin.
Funny.
And then,
it's a very funny
that was really good.
Gag.
So he puts his leg on the other side, gets up, and then the chief comes in.
The chief comes in. He's like, look sharp, man. And Balky goes, I'd look sharper with a hat. He's still trying to get this hat. Anyway, they're about to start training when suddenly the alarm goes off.
Uh-oh, there's a fire.
And all these firemen kind of stream into the scene, some from down the pole. And we hear like an announcer, like a alarm voice go, engine number 151, respond to structure fire at 529 Lawrence. Oh, dispatch.
Fireman dispatch.
And so Chief Newton's like, everyone get on the truck. We got a fire to fight. And then Balky's like, where do I sit? And he's like, you're not going anywhere. And then Balky really wants to go on the fire truck. He goes and like starts climbing onto the truck. And then Chief Newton grabs his legs and like pulls him horizontally. But Balky's like holding on to the handles of the truck.
It's so funny.
He's like, no, please. And this is a funny line. He goes, I want to ride on the fire truck. It's been my dream since yesterday. And the chief is like trying to pull him off. He's like, you're not going anywhere. He finally lets go of Balky's legs and then grabs him sort of like around his midsection and does like hoists him over his shoulder in like a fireman's carry.
It is a fireman's carry because Balky goes, as he's being carried, he's like, oh, look, he's doing a fireman's carry. And he puts him and he sits him down on the chair all the way on the left. He tells him, you sit right there. And he runs back to the fire truck, and Balky gets up and runs to the fire truck and turns around and goes, sit, like he's a dog. He tells him to sit, and Balky hurries back and then just sits on the chair.
And he tries again. He says, excuse me, sir. And the chief goes, stay.
Yeah, as he's in the fire truck.
The truck pulls out with the sirens.
He's treating him like a dog. Sit, stay.
And Balky says, this isn't fair. They get to put on their hats and go fight a fire. Those Lucky Charms.
The cereal.
Lucky Charms cereal, yeah. And Larry's just like totally fine with the situation.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be in a fire.
Like, but he tells Balky, yeah, life is tough. And he goes, I'm going to go make some coffee. And off to stage left, there's like a door to like a kitchenette area.
Yeah, the commissary. Larry goes to the commissary when the girls enter from the other side.
Canteen.
Jennifer and Marianne, and Balky is so excited. He goes, Marianne, and he's supposed to sit on the chair, right? He doesn't want to not follow orders, so he's hopping with the chair, seated towards Marianne. It's kind of funny.
And then he's like, what are you guys doing here? And Jennifer says, oh, we just happened to be in the neighborhood. And then Marianne blows her cover. She goes, no, we weren't. We were clean across town when you said, I've just got to get to that firehouse.
So during this, we see that Larry has heard their voices and he looks through the windows and he sees that Jennifer and Marianne are there, right?
Yeah.
So he closes the blinds. He's going to do something. Yeah. Then we cut back.
Wait. Let's see. Let's talk about what Marianne's wearing.
This is the next thing. Marianne, what is Marianne wearing? It's amazing.
Marianne is wearing this like very slim fit like pantsuit with shoulder pads, but it's matching print.
Yes, this 3-piece suit.
Yeah, it's 3 pieces, matching bold print,
With
and
like
the print looks like sofa upholstery.
It's
I
like-
swear we had this sofa.
It's like cream as the background, but then there's like red and
Big
green plants and flowers and
plants.
trees.
It's like 80s sofa
It's like
upholstery.
she's wearing a sofa. Yes.
Yeah. It looks good, actually. She's rocking it.
She pulls it off, but it totally did remind me
stands
of...
out a little bit.
It totally did remind... Because it's all bad, the same print, like the whole outfit.
Yeah.
So it's like she's covered in sofa material.
Yeah, it looks good, though. I would wear it today. It's like something Harry Styles would wear today.
Oh, yeah. Now it'd be fashionable. With the big, like, feather collar or something.
Okay, so she gives away. Jennifer's just like dying.
She's like, I gotta get over
still
and
like
see Larry.
having these
She's
fantasies.
got the fantasy.
And Balky tells them they're going to be disappointed, and they look at him. Why? And he goes, "I don't get my hat for another 4 days." And meanwhile, we cut to inside the kitchen, and we see Larry has put on his fire jacket and a hat, and he's grabbed an axe over his shoulder.
And the audience is like applauding.
Yeah.
They're going crazy because he comes out with this swaggery fireman walk. And he's
confident Larry.
He's like, Balky, I just finished my heat tolerance test. I'll be ready when I have to fight a towering inferno. Oh, Jennifer, Marianne, I didn't know you were here. He's saying all Mr. Macho Fireman. As you saw them come in, he put all this stuff on.
And Jennifer kind of swoons a little.
Oh my God, Jennifer's mouth is dropped open and she's just stunned.
She thinks he's the sexiest Larry she's ever seen.
And he walks over to Balky right behind him, and Balky's like, oh, too bad you didn't get here sooner. You missed all the excitement. The alarm went off, and the siren was wailing, and everybody jump on the truck and race off to fight the fire, and then they say we have to stay here and sit in chairs.
Balky's English also
has
regressed a bit in this episode.
It's quite comical.
It had been very Americanized.
Yeah, what happened to the dangling participle, Balky? You were studying the dangling participle, and now you can't dangle it.
Speaking very Meposian.
I just love the way he goes, though. At the end, he goes, they say we have to stay here and sit in chairs. He's all like distressed.
And Larry's like, oh no, stop talking, Balky. He's like, what Balky means is that we were told to stay here and take care of any incoming emergencies. Chief Newton is saving us for the big fires.
Yeah,
and you see Jennifer like swoon a little.
Whole time. Yeah,
and he goes, "The raging blazes." Again, there's nothing like racy about these words, but the way they're delivering them
and the look,
implies
the delivery, the look they're giving
really
each other,
saucy, sultry,
and Jennifer's
delivery.
Just like, Larry, you look wonderful. As she's just like staring at him.
And then Marianne points to the fire pole, and she goes, "Balky, what's up there?" And Balky goes, oh, the other end of that pole.
The other end of the pole? Stupid. You want to see?
So silly.
He's still hopping over to her.
And she's like, and he hops over. They go over to the pole and they exit the scene. Larry and Jennifer kind of like step toward each other real close. And Jennifer's like, I love the uniform, Larry. By the way, I had that dream again last night. And then they start kissing in the firehouse.
Yes, just in the middle of the firehouse.
Yeah. But it's really, I felt like it was kind of awkward because, well, maybe for the camera they did this, but like usually when you kiss passionately, your like arms are involved and
he's still holding an axe.
She like puts her hand down straight to her side.
Yes.
In the kiss.
A lot of their kisses are very awkward in this.
Yeah. I think they have to be rated G.
He's got his hand behind her back and her arm is just down.
She drops her arm very obviously to straight. So I don't know what that was about. Anyway, he's like, I'm on duty, you know. I was left in charge. And he's like swagger talking. He goes, neither rain, nor snow, nor sleet, nor hail, nor gloom of night shall stay this trusted firefighter from the swift completion of his appointed rounds. And Jennifer, they're like staring, they're like face to face, eye to eye. And she goes, isn't that the mailman's creed?
It is.
And Larry's like, well, they use it too.
They use it too.
And then he says, can I show you the officer transportation unit? And Jennifer just stares him in the eye. She goes, what?
He goes to the fire pole. Let me show you our
And then
pole.
they do this funny, like, side-by-side walk slow toward the fire pole.
Looking at the fire pole. And Larry's like, it may look deceptively simple, but I can tell you from experience, that pole slide is one of the most difficult maneuvers to master. And he says that, and when at that point, Marianne just comes gliding down the pole going, wee! And Larry just goes, she didn't do it by the book.
And then Balky comes down the pole upside down,
It's great. Head first, he slides
and then
down.
does a
and
handstand.
Yeah, it's so great. That
Round
looks
off
like
to the
fun.
floor.
I bet they had a lot of fun doing some pole dancing tricks on that pole. You can do a lot of pole
I don't know
dancing.
if pole dancing was like as popular then.
It's an amazing exercise, apparently.
Apparently. I want to try it.
Yeah. So, anyways, Jennifer's like, we should go. We got an important job. But she tells him she's proud of him. And they head for the exit. Jennifer and Marianne head for the exit. And they stop and they look back. And Jennifer goes, doesn't Larry look handsome in his uniform? And Marianne's like, he sure does. And he should always wear a hat. It covers his oddly shaped head. And she walks out.
And some nice face acting by Jennifer here. She just like turns back, looks at Larry, and you see her face get panicked for a
second.
moment,
She goes,
oh,
wait,
what?
he does have a oddly shaped head.
But just in
She's
her
like,
face. And
okay,
then she
whatever.
follows Marianne out and they leave. And Balky goes to Larry like, wow, Jennifer was really impressed. Like, imagine how proud she'll be when you fight a real fire. And Larry's like, what? He's like, who needs a fire? Look at the reaction I'm getting with just a uniform.
That's all he needs. He just needs the hat and the coat and
just
axe.
needs a fireman's uniform.
Yeah, you don't need anything else. And then Balky goes, cousin, I smell smoke. And Larry's like, yeah, we're in a fire station. Everything reeks of smoke. And Balky's like, no, it's getting stronger. We better check it out. They walk over to the commissary.
The kitchen
area. It's the kitchen area.
Yeah.
And the coffee machine is smoking. Balky goes, cousin, Mr. Coffee's on fire.
And Larry says, oh my Lord.
So there's like smoke coming from this coffee machine. And they're like,
you don't see any flames, just
don't see any flames, just smoke. And Larry's like, we got to call for help. And Balky just starts screaming help. He goes, help!
Yeah.
But that's not what Larry meant. He meant we got to call somebody as he runs out to the other room and goes to the far end of the set, right? All the way upstage. There's a white phone over there. And he picks up the phone and dials the number. And then the phone at the firehouse rings.
Which is just a little along the same wall that Larry is at.
Yes.
Just a little bit further upstage.
Yes. And Balky's like, oh, incoming emergency.
And so he runs and grabs the red phone. And he's like, hello, fire department, in his accent. And Larry in the back of the same room, just about a couple feet away, goes, yeah, hello. Please, the place is on fire. You got to come quick. And Balky in the foreground phone is like, okay, don't panic. Just be cool. We're here to help you. Where are you located? And then Larry in the back, you see him like put the phone aside and cover the receiver.
Yell to Balky. You
cover
can
the
see
mic
there now.
And he's like, Balky. And Balky's like, just a minute, cousin, I'm on the phone. He's like, Balky. He's like, cousin, just a second, I'm on the phone. And Larry from the back is like, what's the address here? And then Balky says into his phone receiver, I'm sorry, I've got an idiot here. And then he turns to Larry, and Larry's like, you call me an idiot? And he goes, 921 Bay Ridge Avenue. Then Larry says into his phone, 921 Bay Ridge Avenue. Then Balky says into his phone, get out of the city. He says, that's where our fire is.
And at this point, Larry has realized.
Finally, Larry realizes what's going on, even though they're literally standing right next to each other.
Yes.
And then Larry just like makes a face and
hangs up his phone.
Hangs up the phone, and then Larry.
It took Larry this long to realize like, it's kind of funny.
And Larry's like, Balky, and Balky's like, just a second, cousin. Larry hangs up the phone, and then he's like, hello. And Balky's like, he hung up. And so they never really talk about it, but we as the audience know that Larry figured it out. But let's just stop right here. They move on, but before we go on, this whole thing was like
it's so silly.
So cartoonish, so slapstick,
because,
so old-timey.
Larry didn't hear Balky's voice and accent.
But in it still is so. I mean, it's definitely funny, but it's like so silly. I was rolling my eyes. I'm like, you didn't hear his accent. You're literally 2 feet away from each other. But in sitcom world,
you can't hear each other until you turn and he talks to Balky, and now
until you make eye contact.
Yes, now the sound barrier is broken. I mean, I get what they were doing. It's kind of funny. It did go on quite a lot.
He should have realized it way earlier. It just kept going.
But this is the point that Larry is calling someone when he's at the firehouse about the fire also. It's kind of funny.
So the whole thing was very funny.
It's
I just thought it was goofy.
So then what's their next idea? Larry's like, Balky, help me with the hose. And they run over and there's like a whole hose stand and Larry grabs one end of the hose and then Balky grabs the other end of the hose, and they both run back into the kitchen.
With the same hose.
Yeah, and Balky's holding onto it, and Larry yanks him. There's a lot of great physical, cartoony comedy coming.
The whole rest of this episode is physical
Balky gets yanked by the hose because Larry's pulling it over, and then Balky runs up to Larry, and Larry's like, Balky, turn on the water. And Balky's like, I can't, cousin, I'm holding the hose. And they both turn to each other, and they're both holding one end of the same hose.
And Balky starts to
screw them together. He's like, oh, this goes in here.
And then Larry's like, Balky.
They throw it to the ground. That's not going to work.
And then, meanwhile, stage left on the counter is still smoking this whole time.
Yeah.
And, the whole time. Okay, that's the other thing about the phone thing that went on for so long. In the meantime,
there's
the
a fire
is burning, and that took a long time. So anyway, it's still smoking over there.
They need another idea, and Balky suddenly has one. He goes, coffee, cousin. And Larry goes, no, thank you, not now.
Yeah.
As if he's offering him
he's
coffee.
Like rubbing his temples.
He's like, yes. He's like, no, coffee. And he goes over and grabs the coffee.
The carafe from the coffee machine from inside the smoke. It's not hot.
And he uses the coffee and he splashes all the coffee on the fire.
Dousing the
smoke, I guess.
And so he took care of it. It
dumps
went out.
The coffee over the fire.
Larry's like, you're a genius. You saved us. And Balky goes, oh, it was just a simple matter of fighting fire with Folgers.
Yeah, fighting fire with fire.
Yes.
Is the saying.
And Larry's like, well, at least the fire's out, but we're going to have to make more coffee, but I can handle that. And he goes over to that very counter that was smoking on the countertop, and he opens the cupboard above the counter, above where the coffee maker was, and he opens it, and what's inside? Flames.
Flames! There's a fire in the cupboard. How did this fire get started?
Yeah, it has no connection to the...
Maybe it ran up the back or something,
maybe,
and it was heated, and then it ignited. Anyways, there's now a fire in the cupboard, and they're panicking again.
And they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? And then Balky sees the fire extinguisher, and so they go and grab it.
He goes, there's a fire squisher.
Squisher.
He calls it a fire squisher. But they both run over together. They grab it together, and they run back over together. And then they shoot it at the fire together. Putting out
again,
that fire.
Also very cartoony looking, very visual, very physical.
They go,
and that fire goes out. It was like a few medium-sized flames, and that fire goes out with the fire extinguisher.
So the second fire, they have just extinguished.
And Larry's like, oh boy, crisis averted. And they put down the fire extinguisher on the table, and Balky's like, we make a great team. And he goes, you light them, we fight them.
You light them, we fight them.
Larry's
pretty confident now.
Feeling pretty proud of what they've done. He's like, when you're in an emergency with Larry Appleton, you can count on a cool head and a steady hand. And they start to walk away towards stage right when the bottom cupboards
underneath the
coffee maker, underneath the counter, burst open, and they're big flames this time, in the underneath part.
This is an impressive.
This is a third separate fire.
But also, this is an impressive, like, on-stage stunt, because this is, like, real fire.
Dangerous,
and it's a very big. Like, these are huge. Yeah. It's going up almost to the ceiling. Like, it's a lot of fire coming out of here. I just imagine they just put gas lines. But I don't know how they did this. I was like, oh my God, look at that fire.
But also, those three fires shouldn't have really been connected. But anyway. No.
So now the underneath is huge. And
huge fire.
Yes.
And so the guys like scream, obviously. They're like, and they're panicking. They're like, what do we do? What about that fire extinguisher that they just set down on the table?
It's a one-use fire extinguisher.
It's finished.
Too little. They didn't refill it. I don't know. Maybe
obviously something like that, because they couldn't just use that.
That fire is too big for that fire extinguisher.
No, but it would have done something.
It would have helped a little bit. But they didn't think about that. And then Bucky slaps Larry because he's freaking out. And then Larry remembers something. He goes, Mighty Max can save us. Remember that fancy Batman machine outside
with
there?
The pump, yeah.
Yes. So they run to the other room and try to turn on the Bat computer.
Yeah, Larry goes to start like pressing all the buttons, and Balky's like, no, we can't. Don't touch it. Chief Newton say if we touch it, we'll be out of the program, and I won't get my hat. And then Larry reminds him, he's like, if we don't touch it, the fire station will burn to the ground. You won't have a head.
Oh, boy.
And Balky's like, oh, good point. And then they like turning all the buttons and knobs or whatever. And Larry goes, do you see anything marked on? Balky says, I don't know, but if this was a clock radio, this would turn it on. And he flips the switch.
And it does turn on, and the siren starts spinning, and the pump is going up and down.
The pump starts
There's
going.
a red light blinking.
It's so like Danger,
Yes.
Will Robinson.
It's so great. And then those two big megaphones connected by blue hoses. You see white stuff coming out
like
of the
spraying
bottom.
out of them like a
Yes.
shower head.
Yes.
Kind of like a nozzle.
They keep cutting back to this fire, and it's huge.
Oh, meanwhile, the fire
The fire's getting bigger and bigger.
as they're putzing around with these
So
buttons.
they have these two big, they look like red Solo cups with handles also.
Yeah, like, what do you call those things? Like, what did you call them?
Megaphone,
Nozzles?
like a
megaphone shape. Yeah.
Or more like
Huge
a megaphone,
ones,
a big one. And this white foam is kind of streaming out of it like a shower.
But like
nozzle.
a weak shower head. It's not even like with any force. You'd think for a fire device.
And this is great because it is making a mess as they run.
Foam. It's like
it's white foam.
Yeah.
They run back into the kitchen, and Larry is in front, and he's actually hitting the fire. And Balky comes
aiming his foam
with the
megaphone.
fire, and Balky comes right behind him, and he's shooting Larry in the back with the foam, not even at the fire. And Larry's like, what is going on? He turns around, and then he sprays Balky because Balky sprays him in the face. So while this fire is going on, they stop to
and they
spray
just go
each
back
other
and
with
forth
foam.
to keep spraying each other, completely covering each other with foam.
Balky
and they're having like a foam fight.
Yeah, they're having a foam fight.
Meanwhile, the fire is burning.
A huge fire.
The fire is burning on.
And they just keep spraying each other, and they are covered like snowmen.
And it's getting all over the floor. It's like making a huge mess. And the scene fades out.
It cross dissolves to this shot of a close-up of the two of them.
They've like sort of wiped the foam off their
they're
faces.
All wet. They're covered in foam.
We see them from chest up.
Yeah.
There's foam on them, whatever. And they're looking toward the cupboards. And we hear Larry say, Balky, we saved the fire station. And they're just like kind of tired and just standing next to each other.
His delivery is...
We saved the fire station.
Yes.
We're heroes. They're probably going to give us medals and a parade.
And
Balky goes, if this don't get me a hat, I don't know what will. And then the camera pulls back, because right now we're just seeing them from the chest up. But pulls back that they are like waist deep in foam. The whole
kitchen is full of
area
foam
is like waist deep in foam.
Oh, you know what it's like? They do those foam parties at the nightclubs in Ibiza.
Exactly. But this was like, how much foam? Where did all that foam come from? From the pump.
From the Mighty Max. It's like
How did it produce so much foam? It filled the whole kitchen, like from the floor to their waist.
The fire's out.
And the fire's out.
Fire's out. But there is foam everywhere.
So that's a little visual joke
Hilarious.
there.
Yes.
And we cut to the next scene, which is like the next day, presumably, that we're back at the apartment. Balky and Larry are sitting. The girls are with them on the couch, sort of comforting them. Balky's like got his head in Marianne's
Balky's
arms,
real sad.
and she's like, cheer up, Balky. At least you got to put out a fire before they threw you out of the program. And he goes, but I never got to ride on the fire truck, and there's a big empty space on my head where a hat should be.
Oh, he really wanted the hat.
Still with the hat. And then Jennifer goes, well, it wasn't a complete loss. You got a nice story out of it. And we see that Jennifer and Larry are like looking at the story in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And Marianne goes, oh, it was very realistic. Just reading it made me smell smoke.
What?
And then Jennifer's like, Marianne, you were burning toast when you read it. And Marianne goes, all right. So silly. Such a silly line. Yeah.
And then Larry's like, let's all get some dinner. And the girls are like, okay, we'll get our coats. Meet you downstairs. They leave. Balky gets up, puts his coat on, and Larry goes to...
Wait, and Balky goes, but nothing flambe.
Oh, yeah, he goes, nothing flambe. He doesn't want to be reminded of fires or firefighting. Larry goes to the coat closet, and he's got a surprise. He goes, Balky, it's kind of cold outside. You might want to wear a hat.
And Balky's like, no, it's okay. I'll just put my collar up. And then he turns around to see that Larry has taken out of the closet and is holding what? A fireman's
the yellow fireman's hat. You even hear the audience go, oh, like twice. First when he pulls it out, and second when he gives it to him, and Balky goes, cousin, my hat.
Balky sees it and gets so happy.
It's so
and then
sweet.
Larry's so happy too. It's really fine acting here.
Yeah.
And he goes, my hat, thank you. He puts it on his head and like the face mask part, everything, and goes to hug Larry and smacks him in the face with the...
Because he didn't put the visor up.
The
helmet
hits him
visor.
in the face
with the visor. It's great.
And then he adjusts it and finishes hugging him. And again, here his English has regressed. He goes, "How you did get it?"
How you did get that?
And Larry said that he bought it off Chief Newton. And he says, unfortunately, he wouldn't sell me a uniform. And Balky's like, that's okay. I don't need a uniform. And Larry's like, no, it wasn't for you.
Oh, it wasn't for you.
He goes, I was counting on wearing it on my honeymoon. And then he like does this like raised eyebrow, like, thing. And roll credits.
Listener, before we get into our thoughts, check out our TeePublic shop. Get some Dance of Joy swag, some merch, some t-shirts, some hoodies, cell phone cases, tote bags with the Dance of Joy logo. It's a great way to support the show. We love all the people who have bought stuff from our shop. Okay, first of all, Larry, you ever heard of an Army surplus store, Army Navy surplus? You could get a fireman's coat.
Or an adult shop.
Or some kind of
shop,
costume, Halloween. You could get an axe and a helmet, and you just need the coat. You don't need to be a fireman.
Yeah.
You can still get the coat. So that was my first thought at the end of this. But
he's not very creative.
He's not very spontaneous or creative. But yeah, it got a little racy there.
A little racy, but interesting now that I think about it, that they just like used really clean language but delivered it in a suggestive way, both Jennifer and Larry.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little suggestive. It's getting to be for the parents now, the older audience.
Well, you know what? Interestingly enough, around this time, they had moved The Perfect Strangers to that last time slot
9:30
in TGIF. It would have been 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. Yeah. So maybe that justified some of these more adult
that's a good
themes.
point.
It's still really early in the evening, but it's the last show on like the family-friendly 2-hour block of half-hour shows.
In the Midwest, it was always 7 to 9, but I guess on the West Coast
it's 8 to 10. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
that's why they had to move it
because it's 9:30 because it was getting
all adult.
But like honestly, the writers must have had a dilemma because they're like, all right, we're on like this lineup of family TV time, family shows, but at the same time, it's a show about young 30-somethings, early 30s, young people,
so they want to keep it
bachelors and stuff. So they have
slightly
to address
authentic
it somehow. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? Okay, so this episode was directed by Bill Petty.
Okay. Not Joel Zwick. Is he still directing?
And it was the only one directed by this man, Bill Petty. But he had also directed one episode of Full House. Just one, because he was actually an editor on Full House. So,
Okie dokie.
Anyway, a little background about the director of this episode. I don't know if do you think it was like distinct directing style that we haven't
seen?
This
kind of thing that
very slapsticky.
It's on rails. Like at this point, everybody knows what their job is. Like the director of like sitcoms, I don't know, even TV shows. I don't know how much they can do because the characters have been with the show. They know what they got to do. They've been doing this. The director really is just there to yell action and maybe give a couple of notes here and there. But I enjoyed all the slapsticky humor. It was kind of a fun return to some of the great physical comedy that they
Larry
do.
does something nice at the end. We see a bit of their relationship.
That's nice. There's no manipulation
and he's
this time.
Leaning into like, yes, I lied, blah, blah. He's just admitting all his faults.
Didn't he say on the billboard he's never going to lie? Oh, he was never going to lie again that day. That's what happened.
Yeah.
He's never going to try.
We did see, we got a little more about Jennifer and Larry's relationship.
Yeah, that was, like I said, the most, it's very interesting.
Pretty saucy.
He knows what to do. Get her going.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, compared with like the run we've been having, I enjoyed this. A lot of good physical comedy, a little bit of wordplay and stuff like that. A little insight on Myposium things.
Just a random premise of like, how do we get him to be volunteer firemen? But the tie-in into Jennifer's thing was actually that's kind of clever.
Yeah,
it becomes his motivation to continue.
Well, it started with like
torture.
Wainwright, impressing Wainwright.
So he got a story, and now he knows what to do on his honeymoon.
He got two things.
He got two things. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Fun stuff. What did our listeners think there, sister?
Okay. First up, we have listener cousin Pam Hitchcock, who also liked this episode way more than she expected to. She writes, even though it was a rather far-fetched premise, it made as much sense as most of them this season. Exactly. Yes. Lots of good physical comedy put it in the winners column for me. So kind of on our line of thinking. She writes, so Jennifer's not quite the ice queen we thought she was. Go girl.
She's got some.
Yeah,
she's got some sparks.
Finally, she's showing some interest in Larry. It just took a fireman's outfit.
Yeah.
This is funny. Cousin Pam writes, I still don't know what read me like a cheap suit means.
Suit.
Yeah, when you combine them. Well, he was trying to say, read me like a book, I guess.
Yeah.
The fun was in combining these two phrases.
And then trying to figure out, what does that mean?
Yeah. And she writes, it was very sweet of Larry to get Balky the helmet. Agreed. She gives the episode 8.5 Bibi Babkas. That's the good scale.
Yes, that's the good stuff. Wow, that's good. Okay.
Next up, we have cousin Whitney Smith, who writes, I love this, the first line. She goes, this episode was a little weird for Perfect Strangers, a little racy for Perfect Strangers. And she even goes, great balls of fire fits this episode perfectly, which is kind of funny. Like, did the writers intend to be suggestive with that as well?
Again, another like harmless, innocuous thing.
You think it's just a reference to fire, but then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's more like Perfect Strangers After Dark or 50 Shades of Larry 50 Shades of Jennifer.
Well, so now he has gotten into her fantasies as a fireman because she said, I never had a face.
She got engaged to him without ever having a fantasy.
Well, that's only because he tricked her by being nice or something. I don't know. Like, she wouldn't fantasize about somebody like him. He totally tricked her into falling into love with him.
Yeah.
Somehow. Good for Larry. 50 Shades of Larry is hilarious.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Jennifer, she said. Cousin Whitney Smith also liked it and enjoyed it upon rewatching, although she says, I don't know why. And, if you'll remember, Cousin Whitney always likes the episodes without the girls in them. But she's like, even though I can't stand them, she did appreciate getting a little insight into Jennifer.
Well, because they had something to do. They were part of the plot, actually, instead of just there for a side joke or whatever.
She didn't mind Larry's like shift to macho character here, but she writes, what I didn't care for was the fire chief being mean to the cousins and especially to Balky. And like, why does he hate volunteers? He should love volunteers because they're giving back to their community. And why does he hate his job so much? So that character bothered her. Yeah. A valid point. And then she had an explanation about what reading him like a cheap suit means. She writes, what I think he means by that is you can tell what suits are expensive and what suits are cheap. So when he says you can read me like a cheap suit, the suit may look expensive, but a person that's a connoisseur of suits can tell it's cheap. That's funny. That's like an interpretation of this
of the
combined phrase.
Line.
Yeah, I like it.
That works though. Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I did fairly enjoy it, even though the girls were in it. Okay, so we have, including me, we have 4 likes.
Yeah.
And then we have listener Matt Krast, who I think is writing in for the first few times. He had left. He's also left some comments on previous episodes, which we'll also get to. But welcome, Matt Krast, to the group and to the process here. Thank you for joining us. Cousin Matt writes 2 things. 1, I wonder if any volunteer firefighter organizations complained after the terrible chief's attitude toward volunteers. That's a good question. Was there pushback back in the day in 1991?
The chief got canceled.
Yeah, did the chief get
Nobody
canceled?
cared.
And 2, how did a room full of foam come from that machine?
The same way, a mountain gets covered with snow in the snow machine. I imagine it's the same principle. There was a lot of foam.
Where did it come from? It came from the pump.
It created
the pump. Made the foam.
Listen. When Batman makes a device, it works well. Let me tell you. Bruce Wayne doesn't mess around. He made that foam machine. It's the Bat foam machine.
So thank you for your thoughts, Cousin Matt Krast. Matt didn't tell us if he liked or didn't like the episode, but I think we have a quorum for like.
I think so.
Yeah. Cousin Matt has also left. We're going to do some retroactive commentary from Cousin Matt Krast. He writes, growing up in Cincinnati in the 80s to 90s, the idea of someone living up on a billboard until the home team won a game became a reality and maybe the inspiration for the Climb Every Billboard episode. Oh, interesting. Wildman was the sports reporter for rock station WEBN, and he gave us a link to this.
Dennis Wildman Walker lived on a billboard until the Bengals won a game in 1991.
So
it's happening at the same time.
Same time. So that must have been it.
Something. I feel like it was something in the news, and they're like, "Oh, that's funny. Let's put that in there."
Yeah, thank you. That's so interesting.
Because I remember you were like, "Would somebody really do that?"
Was that a thing?
Yeah, it was absolutely a thing. And I think that's not the only instance of it, but Matt found one from Cincinnati in 1991. And if you grew up there, you probably would have remembered this.
Yeah,
I like that.
And then we also have some thoughts from Matt Krass on the ducks.
This is Duck Soup episode,
which was last week.
Yeah.
And he says, "Hey, all you Baba Sticky naysayers, I liked this episode."
I remember I don't think any of us liked that episode.
For one thing, the possessed body trembling thing Balky did when ducks were mentioned was hilarious. And by the way, Bronson Pinchot also did something like it in the often panned movie Second Sight. Oh. He says, still recommended if anyone hasn't seen it. I have not.
Maybe that's what we do in our season break special.
Season break special, yeah.
We'll review Second Sight.
Let's highlight that. Marklin Baker did a good job emulating the move. Actually, he did, but it seems like a Bronson Pinchot original. So talented. But I have to say now as an adult, the moment that sticks out from watching this episode versus when I was a kid in 1991 was the duck mating call. Yep, the sexy duck call.
Yep.
He says, it was a duck-gasm. A duck-gasm. I can't even say that. I can't believe how naughty and R-rated it was for a family show. Was that also Bronson Pinchot's idea? It wouldn't surprise me. But now we have learned also that they had moved to the last time slot of TGIF, so maybe the writers were pushing it a little bit.
I just think we weren't as sensitive back then. You could have fun and get away with things. People have got a little sensitive.
And they just figured the children wouldn't understand.
Right,
anyway.
It'll go over their head.
Yeah.
A lot of PG movies back then had some racy things. When you go back and watch, before PG-13 was invented,
like
it's
the hidden
kind of
things
amazing.
in the Disney movies.
Yeah, well,
those were hidden.
Not even hidden things, actual things. That movie Howard the Duck had duck boobs. There was a naked duck and in the beginning of the movie. And that was a kid's movie. And then there was
always ducks. Ducks are weirdly,
Howard the Duck
racy.
Had a couple of weird sexual jokes.
Ducks. Why are ducks so racy?
In that movie, there's a scene where you find out Howard keeps a condom in his wallet, and it's a loose condom. It wasn't even wrapped up in a thing. And I was like, "This is a kids' movie. This is what we used to do."
Just the condom.
Yes. Yes.
That's so ridiculous.
This isn't a PG kids movie called Howard, but it was okay. Back then, people didn't care. I don't know.
No, we just didn't know. The kids didn't know what anything was. Kids were very innocent back then.
That's why, those movies like Stand By Me and The Goonies, they were PG, but they pushed the boundaries. I don't know. That's why you love them.
Apparently, the 9:30, 8:30 Central time slot.
Once it gets past 8:30, all bets are off.
Was the racy time slot. Anyway, that's thank you very much, Matt Krass, for catching up on the last few episodes.
From the Matt Krass. Don't be ridiculous was not said.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
And we have Dimitri in the photo on the bookshelf.
Yep, on the frame. I saw his photo.
This would have been a great place to have Dimitri in a firefighter's outfit.
Oh, yeah, with a little hose or some foam around him.
Foam or something.
I bet Dimitri is also flame retardant, that little stuffed sheep. I bet you can't burn it.
But even back even if it wasn't at the fire station, just in the outfit back at the apartment.
Or just the little hat.
Or a hat.
Little fireman's hat.
Where is the Dimitri intern slacking?
Cousin, they gave us hats. we got beats.
Okay. If listeners haven't caught on yet, we have certain jokes that make each other laugh from our childhood. Okay, let's talk about Perfect Strangers Today, or PS Today, which is, of course, the segment of this podcast in which we discuss, can we remake this episode today, or will there be problems?
You know what? I think this is another timeless premise.
What would you do with the pump machine? That thing is
They
ridiculous.
still have foam machines like that, right?
Okay, but it would be more realistic.
Yeah, you could do realistic where there's foam shooting out. But
do they have volunteer firefighters?
I think
that
they
seems
do.
like not a good idea.
I think they still do. You got to train them. I think they still do that. Or maybe they're just...
Yeah.
Maybe he gets a story to train, like his story is go train as a fireman and stuff.
Yeah.
But largely, like the fantasy of firemen would still hold true.
Yep.
All of that would
the phone thing. I mean, the fire stations might still have a central incoming.
Oh, I bet they got
line.
landline phones, so maybe you could do that. Or they're on different floors. It'd be kind of funny. They still have,
but
fire
he would
poles.
even if he just called from his cell phone, it would ring
and then
on the other
Balky
side.
picks up. Yes.
They still have fire poles, fire engines. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
it holds up
I
pretty
think
high.
you can do a lot of it. There's nothing really dated.
Pretty high PS Today score.
I don't know if
the typewriter in the beginning.
The typewriter thing is funny, but he could just be doing something else, and the crouching can still be done. Maybe the chief isn't as mean to the volunteers.
Maybe,
I probably have to change that a little bit. But the whole concept of them volunteering, and there's a fire, and they're bumbling idiots, and then they just put it out. You can still do that. They still have those foam things. They look a lot better.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah.
Firemen are still sexy.
Firemen are still sexy.
So,
yeah.
there you go.
Although I don't know if would a fireman's outfit still make a nerdy guy sexy?
I don't know.
Maybe.
You
never know.
It's all about the clothes.
So pretty high score for Perfect Strangers today.
I think you could do it again.
Yeah.
That's it for this week's episode. Listener, join us next week. We made it. The season 6 finale. We are at the end of season 6.
We have a season and a half left.
Oh my God. There will be talks of a wedding. Actual things happening.
Date. Yeah. Let's
in these
see if we get a wedding date.
Lives. Oh my Lord. We're at the end of season 6. Whew, it felt like quite a marathon this season, but we made it to the end.
It did feel like a marathon, but we made it.
And maybe we have an idea.
And maybe we have another pretty good one to close out on, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. If we get another little gem, that'd be great. Thanks to Matt Crass, we might have an idea now for our next season break special.
Yep.
And there's a few gems this season I can think of, so we can talk about all that. In the meantime, another way you can support the show, listener, is to leave us a virtual tip. Buy us a coffee, a virtual coffee. There's a button right on our website at danceofjoypod.com where you can give back and donate and help the show keep going, cover the costs of the show as we get to the last season and the last half season. We appreciate all the support.
We're in it till the end.
We've gotten,
We're so close. We can't stop.
I can't believe we got to the end of season 6.
Oof.
Oh,
It's
man.
been a journey. And speaking of our website, you should go there anyway. It's danceofjoypod.com. And what are you going to find there? You're going to find so many things. You're going to find links and links to all the different
sausage links.
You're going to maybe you'll find some sausage links, but you'll also find another kind of links, which are links to all the different places where you can stream our podcast, where you can subscribe to our podcast, where you can rate and review our podcast, all that fun stuff. Please go do that. Also, there on the website, you'll find a little microphone button, and you can leave us a voice message directly. Tell us if you've ever known any sexy volunteer firefighters or have been one, especially if you've been one. We'd like to know, some of us. Or you can just send us an email at danceofjoypod@gmail.com. And finally, on that website, you can find where to find us on the socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all linked right there on the website. But Imran, what is the most important thing our listeners should do?
Remember, only you can prevent forest fires unless there's non-dairy creamer around. And then you just
fire with Folgers.
Then you just have to throw the non-dairy creamer into the fire.
Check your basement light bulb ballasts.
Whatever that is. No, the most important thing is to share the show, of course. Listeners, spread it around. Text someone, post it, share it from the app you're listening in now.
Tell it to your fire station. Share it with your firefighters.
Share it with all the fires. When you volunteer for a fire as a fireman, share this episode.
Share it with your foam supplier.
We appreciate all the word of mouth you can use to spread this show around.
Word of mouth goes a long way, and we appreciate every effort. Thank you very much. That's our show for this week. Now we are so happy.
Now we are so happy. We do the dance of joy.
Hey, 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 hey.